And welcome back to MatStats, the show where we talk about stats and things with wrestling with Glenn Gormley and Kevin Hazard. I'm Jason Bryant. Today, we're going to be talking about goats and not farm animals. We're going to be talking about the greatest of all time, a term that back in my day, it was like, I don't even want to talk about when these guys were farming. The GOAT was like the Bill Buckner, like you're the GOAT, you screwed up. Now we're using term GOAT, greatest of all time. We've had the discussions among other sports. There's always the Jordan versus LeBron, the Gable and the Sandersons wrestling now. But today we're talking about the greatest teams of all time. And we're going to look into possibly who are the best NCAA Division I or the NCAA era collegiate teams of all time. Before we get to that topic, I'm going to touch on the Hall of Fame Honors Weekend that we just finished up with. Of course, Kevin Hazard, you're part of the board for the Virginia State chapter. I've spent a lot of time with you and Brian this weekend. Normally, I spend a lot of time with Brian anyway, but Frank Popolizio went in. He went down and spoke on his behalf for the tribute breakfast. You're down there as part of the state association. We had a good afternoon at the Iron Monk Brewing, in which Dayton Fix's brother was our beer tender. So all around a good wrestling weekend in Stillwater. It's always one of my favorite weekends. But Kevin, this is something you've got some work stuff to do, but it's also a good chance to rub some elbows and just kick back and enjoy some wrestling, folk.
I couldn't agree more. It's funny, you go to that breakfast and you go to some of the events, and it's a little like the NCAAs, but there are 18,000, 17,000. Here it's hundreds, and it's like distilled. So it's just wrestling star after wrestling star, and it's a really relaxed environment, and it's a great weekend. And they do such a good job putting that together.
Yeah, enjoyed it. And I know at one point when Frank Popolizio and John Smith there, Frank was going to go say when John talked to Brian, hey, you guys want to come with? So John Smith is driving us around his farm, like, just outside of Stillwater, riding around the farm, and not a single thing about wrestling was even spoken. And Frank Popolizio is a farmer. He's got a farm up in New York. So they're sitting there talking about farming and land, and John's giving us a history lesson about, like when this acreage over here was from the 160 acres from the land rush, and it was just like, you're sitting back, and normally I'm usually the most talkative guy in a room. That's might have been the quietest anybody's ever heard me, because I'm sitting down and shutting up, just listening to John talk about what John knows about. I don't know crap about farming, but I'm just sitting here hearing him and Frank talk. Me and Brian, again, we're paid to talk. We didn't say a whole lot of anything, and then Frank's son Luca was with it. It was just really just a cool atmosphere to see how like in these situations where you can sit down and have breakfast with somebody and you're not in the confines of a wrestling tournament where people are amped up for something. They've got athletes they're training. It really was. And, get to see a different side of John W. Smith that we don't see. And it's really, really a cool atmosphere. And again, last year, Tony Rotundo and I went into Iron Monk Brewing, and he looks at the guy and goes, does that guy look like a fix? And sure enough, yep, it's Dayton's younger brother, Derek, who it's the namesake of his father there. So, and he gave us a tour of the brewery too. So it was an all-around wrestling weekend. Even when we got away from wrestling, we ran into wrestling. So, Glenn, sorry you missed out on that trip, but me and the Hazards had quite an opportunity. And Glenn, from your perspective, the Hall of Fame, you've had a chance to talk to numerous Hall of Famers, of course, at the state level, at the national level, and you've been to Honors Weekend before. What is it like to just, have a chance to be around wrestling people when they're not talking about wrestling?
Yeah, it is a different situation. The Hall of Fame is a great way to meet some different people and be around them. This weekend coming up, I'll be around a bunch of William Mary wrestlers, and we won't be talking much about wrestling. We'll be talking about different things about life. So it is a neat situation.
Today is the time we release this show. We will have passed Honors Weekend. We would have passed Final X, but we get into the meat and potatoes of our matter, and today it's greatest teams of all time. And as always, Glenn sets up our presentations in a way that I haven't quite been able to grasp. So, Glenn, set us up. We've got Roy Hobbs out here from the great baseball movie The Natural, which for some reason I can never not get the theme song out of my head when I'm playing golf. I don't know why, because it's not a golf movie, but I just think about the putts. I just vision the Masters and putting, but the theme to The Natural's playing. So I guess it's fitting we're starting with The Natural today. But inspiration here?
Inspiration here. Me and one of my William Mary Wrestling colleagues, Sean Cavanaugh, were talking about The Natural on the farm the last couple years. And I thought this was the best way to start it because obviously Roy Hobbs is a fictional character, But, he says this famous line. And then when I walked down the street, people would look over and they said, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was in the game. So I thought that was a fitting situation for it.
Dun 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 dun.
Yes. I'll let you sing, Jason.
I love that. I love that.
So this show,
I'll just hum.
This show is about the NCAA's men's teams and what's the greatest team ever, and that. Of course, our next slide is I Feel Like a Number. I do have to figure out how we can use this Bob Seger song without getting in trouble one day.
Yeah, because Kevin will use night moves, and we don't want to talk about that either.
No, we don't. We don't. 8675309 is one of the famous songs with numbers. Okay, so slide 3, of course, we have on there.
Okay, now that's going to play in my head for the rest of the day.
8675309.
Off to a great start here on episode 21, mind you.
Yeah. The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the NWCA, and not all the time do Gormley, Jason, and Kevin all agree on that. Okay. So we're going from there. Now, one of the questions I was asked when I was doing this show, are you including women? If so, why not? Okay. Women don't have a long enough history yet to do this. Okay. All three of us are going to be alive long enough to one day we can do a show where women have enough meat on the bone as a long-term sport to do this. So we will get to that. It's not like we're leaving them out for no reason. Okay. Next slide. This is dedicated to greatest teams, not individuals. Okay. It's a team effort. Now, I got almost all my information on this from Jason's Bible of Wrestling, the best thing that's produced every year. Okay. You can't walk through life without that. Okay. And it shows that, like, when the freshmen became eligible immediately, like a couple of famous, one or two of our greatest individuals ever, Gray Simons, my ex-coach, and Dan Gable, were not eligible as freshmen in the NCAA. Okay. Red shirt rules changed, Olympic red shirt rules, injury red shirt rules, extra COVID rules, years. There's been so much that's changed, through the years on the eligibility status. Okay. The next slide, I want to get this across to people. I'm going to name the greatest team of all time. Just because you're not the greatest doesn't mean you're not off the scale great. And since we started with baseball, I'll go with Ted Williams, was one of the greatest hitters ever, but he was not Babe Ruth. That doesn't mean we all didn't wish we could hit like Ted Williams, right? We wouldn't have had to make weight if we could hit like Ted Williams. Okay. In our sport, the world's oldest and greatest sport, wrestling. In college wrestling, it is judged by what you do at the NCAA championships. Is this fair? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's how we do it. One of the few things we know about regular season is Cale Sanderson never lost a bout, 159-0, regular season, tournaments, postseason, whatever. He was undefeated. But we don't know a lot about regular season in our sport. Okay. Where did this NCAA tournament become so big? Okay. Now, granted, we tend to look at things in our lifetime frame. When I was in college, NC State with Jim Valvano, who sadly passed much too soon, made their Cinderella run and beat Houston in the finals. Okay. It resulted in a March Madness effect. Fans tend to remember what happened in the NCAA championship. There's plenty of Cinderella stories, NC State being the most famous. Okay. Ole Miss baseball just 12 months ago was a perfect example. Mediocre team during the season and won the regions, the super regionals, and the World Series. Okay.
They might have been the last team into the tournament, right? I mean, yes, it was argued that they have even been in the NCAA baseball tournament.
Correct, Jason. They were the last in, last out, because they were the last team standing. And I do know of a team who swept them in the regular season, but did not make the College World Series that year. Okay. Football.
Was that a Tennessee team?
Of course, yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Yeah. So football seems to be the only NCAA sport where we remember the regular season. Okay. MatStats will always remember the third Saturday in October. And just in case anybody forgot, last year Vols 52, Bama 49. Football history is made high and inside, as you see on the slide number 9. This is a famous quote by Ted Williams. Okay. Baseball is full of regular season stats that other sports aren't. Kevin, I'm going to have you explain to us, what does 61 with an asterisk mean to you?
That's 61 home runs by Roger Maris, and it was an asterisk because he had a couple extra games to get him in.
Correct. It was the first year they ever played 162 games.
161 from 154 to 162.
Correct. What does 56 mean?
56 game hitting streak.
Yes, Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio.
714, Kevin.
That's home runs.
And 714 became such a famous number. For anyone who's ever seen Dragnet with Sergeant Joe Friday, his badge number was 714 because he was a big Babe Ruth fan. Okay. And then the last number I threw in there, 2632, Kevin.
Games in a row by the Baltimore Oriole. His name escapes me.
Cal Ripken Jr.
He just
correct
right off
correct.
The top of my head.
Very good.
And
just off the top of
that's
anybody's.
Ted Williams.
Yep. At 406, I missed that. Thank you. Does anyone know off the top of their head the record for most postseason home runs in a career or in one single postseason?
Elias Sports Bureau is probably
the answer
one
late in the show, but this just is an example.
Baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's go into one more thing before we really get into this. In all 4 major sports, now 2 of the baseball teams are tied with the most wins ever. None of those 5 teams ever won their championship, which is just a wild stat. Okay. But nothing like that do we remember in wrestling, like who won the most regular season matches. Remember who won the tournament. Okay. In football, and I have to celebrate a Sewanee shirt on, okay, a Sewanee t-shirt. Arguably the greatest team of all time was Sewanee in 1899, not 1999, 1899. But people forget about it because it's so long ago. Okay. The only person you mentioned, Jason, to talk to Elias Sports Bureau, the only person I could talk to Sewanee football is John Phipps, okay, who actually sent me this shirt. The famous thing about Sewanee, the old quote, and on the 7th day, Sewanee rested. They beat anybody who was anybody in a 6-day period. And in case anybody was wondering, I did this just for Jason Bryant. In 1899, the Vols did beat Georgia 5-0. Okay, in case anybody was wondering. Okay, now.
Well, also, in case you want to, Sewanee, also known as University of the South, but athletically branding, they've gone back to Sewanee recently. So
thank you for that, Jason.
They've kind of waffled that. And actually, Sewanee also one of the original members of the SEC.
We should never forget about the past, even that Sewanee was so long ago. Okay. And this is why MatStats is exploring the pre-1974 teams. Jason ironically mentioned the greatest Michael Jordan or LeBron James. In Gorm's mind, there's no question it's the Big Dipper, Wilt Chamberlain. But we seem to forget about him because he played so long ago, although Kevin and I are old enough to remember seeing him play live. Okay. What are the 3 categories we're going to discuss here on greatest teams ever? Number 1, the best single season team since 1974. The reason we use this is it is 50 seasons ago, despite us not having one tournament in 2020. It's also, as you can see from reading Jason Bryant's manual, and if you haven't read it, you should read it, okay, it's when the divisional era started. Number 2, the best program or dynasty over time since 74. And then number 3, the best team pre-74. Most people base their decision on opinion. I'm a little bit different than most people in this. I'm a statistician. Okay. it can be tough just to use stats. Okay, but that is what MatStats is based on. Okay. Mark Twain, one of the most famous authors of all time, had a quote, "Never let the truth get in the way of a good story." And that's what people usually do with opinions. They're just, they can't even remember everything they saw. Okay. So hopefully this provides a more educated conversation here on the stats. Okay. Now, next. Okay. The next slide. Our memories play tricks on us, guys. The confidence of an eyewitness might not correlate to reliability. This distortion is known as post-event misinformation effect, okay, where we don't just really remember what the heck's going on as we should remember, okay? So if you have the brain capability to remember all the NCAA matches and compare a team from 74 to a team in the 220s, MatStats has a great idea. Quit your job, move to Vegas, play blackjack, and make millions. Then put enough money.
I might still contend, Glenn, that the 1996 Grundy team in Group AA Virginia is the best high school wrestling team Virginia's ever seen. Tass Robertson of Grundy will argue that it was the 92 or 93 team. So, again, I'm going to still argue that point.
Good.
Till I'm blue in the face. And it wasn't even our team.
Yeah, and that's a great example. Thank you. So after you play blackjack, you put enough money away from your family, use the money you won in Vegas to fund a men and women's wrestling team, and then give the rest to the NWCA. And contact your CPA before doing this. I'm not a CPA. But your college and NWCA are both bona fide tax-exempt staff, not-for-profits. Okay, now, an example of our memories, okay? I've been to 39 tournaments. Hazard's been to 40. Jason and Brian Hazard have been the nuts and bolts of God knows how many tournaments. So the three of us have seen who knows how many tournaments, okay? I do the stats work. Kevin and Jason do exactly what Jason just brought up, more of the opinion thing. We want a highly lively, educated debate. Now, using this, it really depends on what you use to say what's the best team ever. And I will use something in another sport that won't get people so upset in this show. Football.
Tennessee. You're going to get me upset if you keep using Tennessee.
Okay. Well,
Just
Jason,
kidding. Continue.
No problem at all. There's a good reason why I use these two coaches. If you use most wins, Bear Bryant has more than General Neyland. If you use winning percentage, General Neyland's better than Bear Bryant. If you win national championships, the Bear's better than the General. If you use record versus each other, the General's 5-0-2 against the Bear. So it's a 2-2 tie. How do you decide? Well, I did this research on Memorial Day, and today is June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day. So you got to give that one to General Neyland since he fought and won in 2 world wars. I mean, now that has nothing to do with the topic, but it's just something I'm using to do here.
It is the toughest criteria I've ever heard about breaking a tie, so let's go with that. And by the way, Bear Bryant, no relation, because he was the AD at Alabama when they dropped the sport. So, no relation.
Yeah. Yes, I'm glad we said that. So nobody thought that. Now, MatStats, you need one of the Bear Bryants out, the houndstooth hats. If you want to get me mad, you'll wear that one day. So MatStats uses the following 6 categories to try and determine this. Number 1, number of champions. Number 2, number of All-Americans. Number 3, number of team points. Number 4, margin of points, first place versus second place team, margin of victory. Number 5, percentage of total team points for the champion team versus the all points of the tournament. Number 6, comparing the real, and I said it in quotes, 23 points from 1974 to 23. It's a wrestling statistician's way of adjusting for inflation. Just so you know, I'll let you know here, 5 and 6 are highly correlated, almost +1. So it's almost using the same thing. Now, let's dive right into this, guys. The There are 5 times that a champion has had 5 individual champions. Kevin, tell us those 5 teams, please.
Well, it's Iowa, Okie State, and Penn State.
Of these 5 schools that have had 5 champions, if you break the tie using All-Americans, it's either Iowa in 96 or Iowa in 86. If you use most team points, it's Iowa in 97. If you use the percentage of team points, it would be Iowa in 86 or the margin of victory. Kevin and Jason, give us some of your input on this.
One thing is it makes it interesting is some of the things that will jump out is I think the folks pre-era where we had more than 100 Division I schools fielding it would be like that was tougher because there were more teams. Now, was it because potentially we have teams, a lot of those teams that were dropped weren't super well funded to begin with. So does the school that qualifies one wrestler, for example, I'm just going to pick a team I know that's dropped at a random. Does Marquette's presence have any difference on Iowa's strength or the strength of the tournament in that era? I don't think it is because it's still got 330 athletes. So granted, there are more teams and it could be theoretically tougher to get in, but those are still the top 330 wrestlers, or in that era, the weight classes, because we could have 40 at one weight and 19 at another based on how the wild card system went. So ultimately, I'm just looking at things that could be like, well, eras. Well, it's because we like to compare eras. So I don't think that plays a difference. Other things, and eras prior to, I know we're going to get to this later, but in the 60s, there was a stretch of time where there were 11 weight classes. So like you're using your Maris asterisk, more opportunities for more All-Americans. In this situation, we don't have a team that is from that era because we're going post-74. But it does make an interesting topic to get to those pre-74 teams, which we're going to touch on. So those are the couple things that jumped out to me. And, of course, there's always different ways to frame arguments. Like you said, in the scoreboard said, lies, damn lies, and statistics. So we've got that going for us. So, and I will go back to my Grundy reference at high school. That particular high school team, that was the first year 14 weight classes. So there's an asterisk there in Virginia because previously there was no 215. So there's a 14th weight. So, of course, you can't have 14 semifinalists because you only had 13 weights before that. So, and that Grundy team had 328 and a half points, 14 in the semis, 12 in the finals, and 9 champs. They lost 5 matches the entire tournament. So all of those factors are always going, and here's another thing that, to your misinformation effect or your recency bias or however you want to say it. I don't know if there's a stat for this, Glenn, but there's also that first-time experience that will sway your opinion. You set the bar based on every time from there on after. First time I went to the NCAA championships, it was in Albany in 2002. Not the greatest attended event, but Cale Sanderson won his 4th title, and Rob Roan hit the cement mixer, heard around the world. So those two situations will offset my roommate getting upset, getting beat in the first round, and another buddy getting upset in the first round. So there's all that emotion that goes into that first experience. I will also tie that back to the first time I went to the Virginia High School AA and Single A state tournament. That first experience and seeing Grundy go on that roll. So my experiences and our experiences as we argue these things, and this is, again, part of Glenn's point, is we're looking at the numbers. But, for example, that Grundy 96 team, the numbers will seem to verify a lot of different things, and it's going to be really hard to argue against the stats. But those emotional things come into play. So those are the things that I'm looking forward to this. And because I'm going through this, yes, I've seen the slides, but I'm sitting there. I took emotion out of it when I was just proofing it earlier. So Glenn's going to throw this out there, and I'm curious on how it's going to end up, and I'm curious what Kevin's going to see because I didn't start going to the Nationals till 2002. So I am not swayed by any of the data except for the Penn State era stuff that's on this list and the Oklahoma State data that's on this list. So
I started going, my first was in 72, and I remember Iowa State just being so strong, and it just, looking through this, when Glenn said we're going to do this, I'm thinking it can only be one of 3 teams. It's either Iowa, Penn State, or Oklahoma State because they are the 3 teams that really had runs during that era. Now, if you go back, there are other teams, but those were the 3 teams that really, had a chance of being the best of all time. for that era.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Now, the next criteria we used on slide 23, you'll see 9 teams have had at least 9 All-Americans. 2 of these are pre-1974. Now, if you just base it on the amount of All-Americans, Minnesota in 2001 is the only school ever to have 10. However, they didn't even have a finalist that year. Okay, so it'd be very difficult to say that Minnesota team was the best ever. Okay, if you look at it based on champions, percentage of points, and margin, it looks like 83 Iowa. Okay, there are some other teams with 9 All-Americans, as you can see there on that list. But we threw in the 2 Iowa State teams, 65 and 69, just to show you how many more points are available today. Okay, Iowa in 65 scored 87 points and won, and in 69 they scored 104. So there's clearly some differences in the way they scored the tournament. However, if you look at the percentage of points of scored, Iowa of 83 outstrips all those other schools with 9. All right. In my mind, from All-Americans, you have to go with Iowa of 83. Now, the next team with the most points ever. Slide 25 shows you the teams with the most points ever. Okay. And it's Iowa, some Penn States in there, and then the famous Iowa team and the Iowa State team in 87 that snapped the Hawkeyes' 9-year win streak. Okay. Now, if you just use it based on points, you would go with the Iowa 97 team. However, like we say in this, the points have changed so much. And what is scored now, what was scored then, et cetera, how many All-Americans, et cetera. We cannot just use the points in my mind. If you do want to use just points, I'll agree you got to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Okay. The top 10 winning margins of all time. 1986 Iowa team, and from what Jason just mentioned about the first tournament he ever went to, this was the first tournament I ever coached. And the first match we ever wrestled in, Teddy Lewis got pinned by Kevin Dresser. Okay, so in my mind, a lot of this 86 Iowa team was really something special, with the 5 champions. Okay, if you look at the winning margin, okay, you either have to go with the Iowa team or that 83 Iowa team still comes up because of the amount of percentage of points they had over everyone else there. Okay. But if you use the margin, I would give a slight lead to the 86 Hawks. Okay. Here's some examples on how the scoring's changed over the years, and I'll let Jason weigh in with more because he's far more educated on this than I am. For a time period in the 80s, a pin was only 1 bonus point. It's now 2. In 79, we started having 8 All-Americans. The placement points have changed through the years, and many of our shows based on margin of victory, I went to the William Mary Luxury Suite, and nobody but me or Kevin knew how many points you got for placing. Okay. Starting in 86, you would follow a quarterfinalist. Starting in 96, it became a modified double elimination where you had to lose twice to be eliminated unless you came in second or third. Right? Because they only lose once. Okay. 1952 was the first year there were 10 weight classes in the tournament. In 1928, there was only 7. And then for a period of time, there were 8 weight classes. So, MatStats is introducing a category to judge the best teams ever that perhaps no one else has seen before or thought of. There's 2 things. Our 5th one was the percentage of all team points, and the 6th one was the real 2023 team points. Okay. Now, what is the percentage of all points? Jason Bryant, with his hard work, sent me a slide of all the points every champion ever had and all the total team points that were scored by every team, and you just divide the one by the other one. Okay, now on slide 31, it sums up what years there were some rule changes and amount of All-Americans, and you can see the average points per year in those time spans on the sheet. You can see from 1929 to 1954 is 124 points. Now it's 1,400. Okay, so you can't just compare team points. Now, MatStats also developed an inflation type thing where we can use the 2023 points, which of course was won by Penn State this past year, and how everybody else's points would translate to that. Like $1 today is not worth what it was in 1979, 50 years ago. 74, 50 years ago. Okay. Nobody with good conscience can compare the amount of home runs Babe Ruth hit, compare the home runs now, due to it's a different world, guys. Okay. My grad thesis in baseball was based on this whole thing. So I do have some experience in doing this. Okay.
All right, Glenn, I do want to interrupt you there because when we're talking about the Bambino, in his day, the swill you used to serve was a performance-enhancing drug. Babe Ruth was drinking beer to get that extra pop. That's not a banned substance.
And you think about
yes, correct. It's not. I wish I would have Babe Ruth advertised.
You think about Ruth too. Compare his 60 and who came in second. They probably had, I don't remember, but it was somewhere like 20 or something, right? It wasn't like Ruth had 60 and somebody else had 54.
When he hit 59 home runs, he hit more home runs than every other team in the American League except for the Yankees. Every team.
Every team total.
Slide 33 shows us the percentage of all points scored post 1974. You'll notice something here. This is the top 15. Every single team is Iowa, except for the Iowa State team that stopped Gable's nine-year win streak. Now, if you're going to use this, it's not even close. It's the 83 Hawkeyes. Okay. They're a 13% increase over the second best team, which is also, of course, the Hawkeyes. There's no jump that much from 15 to 14 or any other numbers like that. That's how dominant this team was. Okay. Now, we're going to go to slide 35, 36, and 37, which show us the real team points by the champion for every year from 74. And guys, guess who stands alone in this? On that, you can see that in 38. It's Iowa. Okay. And of the top 15, Gable coached 13 of those. Colonel Meyer coached 1, and Gibbons in his famous Iowa State team. Okay, so just so you know, our fifth and sixth thing, it says here in slide 39, they're highly correlated. It's a lot of the same thing. Maybe people look at it different ways, whichever easier to remember for you guys. MatStats being Glenn Gormley on this, okay, was surprised that Iowa's 83 team was this. Okay, I was not at that tournament. Okay. I am saying here, the 1983 Iowa team is the best college wrestling team since 1974. No question in my mind. But like Jason said earlier, there's liars, damn liars, and statisticians. Jason and Kevin, take it away. Tell me what you think.
Well, I tell you what, when you went through all the statistics, I was surprised. Not just and when you're picking the number one team, you're picking between a couple of Iowa teams. I was surprised that Penn State wasn't higher, and that Okie State wasn't higher. That just the domination. Let's call it the Gable domination of the statistics over that. The 20-year period he was there is just to me is absolutely phenomenal. The way he completely dominated college wrestling. I was surprised.
Yeah, and I wasn't around that era, so I've only got my eyes to in terms of what I've seen with Penn State and the teams in the early 2000s with Oklahoma State, again with the 5 champs. What's odd is I remember that Oklahoma State the next year hosted the All-Star Classic, and I think there were 5 NCAA champs got beat that night. Now they weren't all from Oklahoma State, but I was like, man, is this what this craziness happens in college wrestling that often? No, but I guess what it also tells us is this is less an argumentative point. What it tells us is fans pay attention to what's going on in State College because, yeah, I mean, there's people arguing, oh, this isn't good for the sport. I mean, Iowa created an era of fans that still follow their Hawkeyes and made them the most hated fan base in the country for a very long time. Now, Penn State is winning titles. And I will say this, I think their fan base is going to start giving the Iowa fan bases of those eras a run for their money because when the teams win, the fans are a lot of puffed out chests. It's a lot of games, a lot of chirping on the message boards. Now we've got a lot more social media. It's not just in the bars. So there's a lot more availability to talk that smack in about the sport of wrestling. So we're in an unprecedented era of being able to see historical things unfold and document them. So what I have to say is less about the numbers surprising, because the numbers don't surprise me when they're put out there. Am I surprised that that's the best team of all time? I don't know because I wasn't there to visually see it. But when we go back and look at the data, you're like, yeah, it's a definite, plausible, and statistically valid scenario. Like, okay, I can get behind that. But again, what we're seeing with the run that Penn State's doing right now, it's creating fans that are be long-time fans of this team 20 and 30 and 40 years from now that are going to be arguing about the teams we're seeing in the 2020s about the teams. Oh yeah, that Iowa 83, yeah, that was a different time of wrestling. There will be 3 people having this very argument 30 years from now about the teams that Penn State is putting on the mat in this era. So, and by then, who knows what the rules are going to be? Are we going to see the 3-point takedown? I hope not. That's just me. But are we going to see rule changes that give us this type of argument? I think this type of discussion, looking at it, we're going to have this discussion 30 years down the line. Whether I'm hosting the show, I don't know. Hopefully, I'm still around then. But we have got a great part of this statistical thing to argue these points because this is what people argue about. They compare titles, they compare stats. For example, Gable Steveson, is he the greatest heavyweight of all time? Not the stats don't say this. You can look at it from a wrestling perspective and say, okay, well, would he beat this guy here? That's an argument I think it's never going to be won. Statistically, I don't think it can be won. That's one of those things where you're looking at nuance of technical things. When you put the weight classes and the weight classes, Glenn, you've given us a real number that's comparable across generations. I love this argument. I don't have a dog in the fight. Didn't go to Iowa, didn't go to Penn State. Don't really care I don't care who wins. I just love it. And I think, remember fans, this is a golden age of wrestling internationally and collegiately. We're getting sellout fans. We're getting win streaks. We're getting records being broken. We're getting 4-timers, and we're getting 4-timers, potential 4-timers lose. We're getting things that don't happen in wrestling history, and now we're seeing another wave of history come through. So soak it in, wrestling fans, because 30 years from now, this might be a completely different discussion. Or is it going to be a discussion of which Penn State team is the best of all time? Like right now, it's a discussion of which Iowa team is the best of all time.
Yes. Thank you, Jason. I agree with you. This is the Camelot days of our sport.
Sorry, I might also make a bid for the 86 Iowa team. I mean, they got 150 some, and their runner-up was in the 80s. I mean, they totally dominated that year.
Yeah, they had 5 champions, a second, a fourth, and a fifth, which isn't too bad. They only had 8 guys in the tournament. And the 83 Hawks, as you see on slide 42, had 9 guys in the top 5, and the 10th guy lost in the blood round. That's a pretty good squad. Okay, now, I welcome anybody's discussion on the greatest team. My mind's made up, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get everyone to agree with me. Next, the best dynasty since 1974. There's 3 teams that really have an argument. Iowa from 75 to 2000 won 20 times. Okie State from 03 to 06 won 4. And Penn State from 2011 to current has won 10. Now, as far as who was the best dynasty ever, have you been paying attention in the show? It's Iowa all over the place. I don't need to explain it anymore. When the top 15 are, everyone but one Iowa State team, it's obvious in my mind. Am I going to anger some young people and some We Are Penn State fans? Yeah, I will. Okay. And if I'm,
like I said, 30 years from now, the data will, when we see how long is this Penn State team going to be on top? Is wrestling, right now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a Gable era type dynasty, because resources and things can happen. I mean, but thing is also, let's also remember, dynasty is not synonymous with consecutive. You can win 10 titles in 8 years. That's a dynasty. You can win 4 in a row. That's a dynasty. But just because you don't win in an off year doesn't mean it's not a dynasty. So keep that in mind, because they talk about that team in New England that won all those Super Bowls up there. Well, yeah, that's definitely dynasty-like. The Yankees baseball kind of defined the word when it comes to sports back in the day. So just because you don't win it every year doesn't mean you're not a dynasty either.
Yep. Some people have been talking to me this past March at Nationals about what Penn State's going to do. Okay, we have a quote from Nostradamus up there. Nothing in this world can one imagine beforehand, not the least thing. Everything is made up of so many unique particulars that cannot be foreseen. This show is only on stuff that has happened. Okay. Now, the past performance is the best predictor of future performance. So I think, based on stats, I think if I have to, predict who's going to win the team title this coming year season, I think you'd all know who I would say. Okay.
83 Iowa?
No. 2024 Penn State.
You can't win that one right now. You can't win that one with statistics. No. Although those guys, they could probably go out there and still scrap. Oh, I'm just
They probably could.
Okay, these dad jokes are bad. I'm just going to move forward. Next slide.
No, I was following up when I said past performance is the best predictor of future. Then slide 46. Was it difficult deciding who was the best pre-74 team? Yes, it was, guys. There were so many changes in this. Okay, the number of schools that had wrestling and participated in the NCAA championships in 1928 was 19 teams. In 73, there was 110. Okay, the numbers of wrestlers went up and down from an all-time low of 42 wrestlers in 1928 to an all-time high of 394 in 1970. As we mentioned before, the number of weight classes went from 7 to 8 to 10, et cetera. Okay, the number of places, we only placed 3 per weight classes for a little bit, then 4, then 6, now 8. Okay, the scoring rules changed. So it really made it difficult. Okay, I don't know why 51-52 season was the first year there were 10 weight classes at the NCAA, but thankfully they did it. Okay, we're all happy about this. Okay, 51-52 was famous for many things, and since we started with baseball, most likely the most famous home run, as Jason alluded to, the cement mixer heard around the world with Ronan Lambrecht. Okay, this was the shot heard around the world when Bobby Thompson hit the home run. And we can all think back, DiMaggio, Mantle, Mays, they were all in this World Series. And another great thing, Jason, I'm sure you're happy to hear me say this, at 51, the Vols won the football championship. So, the national football title. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave that one alone.
All right, good enough. So, Gormley picked 6 teams from pre-74, as you can see on slide 48. Okay. That are arguably the best team pre-74 era. Jason and Kevin have looked at this. I'm going to let Jason and Kevin talk this through, and I can moderate it statistically if need be. Go ahead, guys.
I'll tell you this. Here's what jumps out at me right off the bat, that it's not Oklahoma A&M/Oklahoma State. It's not the team from Stillwater. And that's what baffled. I had to go back. I went back and I looked. I was like, wait, yeah. Iowa State Teachers College, now known as Northern Iowa, 1950. 8 weights condensed. I mean, again, different era of wrestling, but you had some iconic wrestlers come through that era. So holy star power, holy dominance. And that's one thing. I don't think this 50 UNI team, though, again, the school we now know as University of Northern Iowa, gets enough respect outside of Cedar Falls for what it did and what they did in the sport. The dream team of 1948, the late Arno Neiman wrote a book about them, about Cornell College, an Iowa school, the smallest school, the first private school, or actually the only private school to win a national championship. And it's currently a Division III school, still has wrestling down in Mount Vernon, Iowa. But that was a great story. This 1950 team out of what is, again, currently known as the University of Northern Iowa, to me is a story that has not been told enough. And I think this puts a cherry on top of why.
Well, I mean, what kind of sticks out about it too, 8 weight classes, 7 All-Americans, and which makes it doubly tough. I mean, we're used to having 8 placers. They only were placing 4. And your guy had to get to the finals in 19
in that era
before you could follow. So they had 7 All-Americans. Just that to me is phenomenal.
And it was very and the draws also fortuitous. It's like, okay, well, I lost to the best guy in the draw, or at least the first or second best guy, because that gave him. Now, what happens if they all lose in the first round to the guys that weren't the champs? Say the 4 guys that weren't champs. Now, I don't have the runner-ups off the top of my head, but the guys that didn't make the finals. What if they lose to the second place guy, or they don't lose to a guy that made the finals? Their numbers are down. So, again, part of this is the situation at the time, but I mean, when we look at the 2019 World Championships where Kazakhstan got a lot of matches into the repechage because they end up losing to the finalists along the way. Hey, those are the cards you're dealt, and it's kind of hard. You play with what you got, right? Holy crap! That's still this 50 team at UNI just still strikes me as that it's not talked about more.
And the one guy that didn't place lost by referee's decision in the blood round.
And a point that's not up there because it's just, I think they doubled the score of the second place team, or really close to it. We'd have to go back and look, but it was I can't remember who it was, but
I mean, my mom was 2 years old at this time, so I can't really speak with any authority over things. So,
well, I wasn't there. I promise I wasn't there. I'm not that old, but I do remember, did baseball cards and statistics, not on Glenn's level, but following batting averages, and I remembered that team. Reading about it years ago, I was just amazed at how dominant they were.
Yes, Kevin. Northern Iowa had 30 points and Purdue had 16 that year, the runner-up. So they almost doubled them. Okay.
That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. All right, guys. Now, let's keep moving on here. The answer to the question on slide 50, you see, it's Manny being Manny. Manny Ramirez has the most ever career postseason home runs. And Randy Arizarana has a single season record. I don't think anybody except for Elias knows that. I had to look both of them up.
I said the difference in those two is I've actually had Manny Ramirez on my fantasy baseball team.
So, Kevin, go ahead and sum up these shows with the top 10 Matt Cliff's notes we give. Put them on the screen for him there, Jason. Thank you.
Okay. What data and stats you use is essential to saying what team was the best ever. Scoring has changed drastically over the years in the NCAA tournament. I mean, case in point, we're talking about the great team, 1950 team. They had 30 points and win it. Now we got 140 and plus to win the tournament. The NCAA tournament is how we judge success and greatness in wrestling, as opposed to regular season record. Iowa 83 is the greatest team since 1974, and this might come as a shock to many. There are several other Iowa teams or Okie State or Penn State teams you hear about. The greatest dynasty since 74 were Gable's Iowa teams. total domination Gable's teams has is shocking and complete. 8 pre-74 teams. It's very difficult to confidently say who was the best best team pre-1974. And 10, the NCAA should change the scoring system to the MatStats margin of victory system. I agree with that 100%.
I don't remember that being in the slideshow here, Glenn, but okay. Well, at least it's not a Tennessee stat, right?
No, I gave our show a little plug here. All right, guys. Now, I'll tell you guys, we'll wrap up the show. The next show, which is, of course, July 19th, 2023, 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, is going to be on the best college wrestlers of all time. This show will be restricted to college wrestlers and accomplishments in college, and it will include men and women. Jason and Kevin, give us some closing things, and then I'll wrap it up.
I can't wait for that one because I'm going to talk highly about somebody who keeps getting left off these lists in the last 40 years. And you probably know who it is, wrestling community. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I'd like to say this is really interesting. The way Glenn went about putting this together. And statistically, I was amazed at how Iowa dominated the statistics. I would have thought that Penn State over the last couple of years would have been intermixed between those two, but just total domination by Iowa was surprising to me.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I hope our viewers enjoy this show. Okay. If you need to lash out at anybody, as always, lash out at Gormley. But for my co-hosts, Jason Bryant and Kevin Hazard, I'm Glenn Gormley signing off on NWCA MatStats.